Okay. So last year, Trish had a conversation with a number of people about public policy and what we could do to get more people interested in public policy in our branches. And it is a bit of a dilemma because there's some of us that are very passionate about it. So we thought what we would do, what came out of that discussion was that some branches like to do a project around public policy. And so what we thought we would do is highlight some of these projects so that you can see what other branches have done and maybe copy them, steal them, or try your own version of some of these kinds of things. So we're going to start off with Lisa Phipps, who's from Tillamook, and she's their public policy chair. She's been with the branch for a while. As she just told us, she is in land use planning. And the Tillamook branch is very well known for some pretty good fundraising, but also for their STEM projects and for good scholarships. So Lisa is on vacation, but as she said to us, it's a working vacation in Michigan, and we're putting her on first so she can jump off at 10:30 or whatever time it is back there. So Lisa, let's hear about your candidates forum and how you did that.
Sure. So this whole process has brought to light for me, this is probably something that I need to get down on paper for all of our folks, because nothing should ever depend on one person. So whatever else you take away, whatever projects you're working on, if they're working, make sure you have memorialized them so they can continue after you're gone, whether it's because you left or you're gone. Make sure that it's memorialized so that people don't have to reinvent the wheel. I was really pleased to be asked to do this evening. This is the project that we're here to talk about tonight are our candidates forums. And we have very, very successful candidates forums. And I would like to just take a second to maybe reframe the influencer conversation, because I think AAUW is one of the influencers in a lot of ways for women who are trying to understand and navigate through the political arena those issues that are important to them. I think they turn to us to better understand them, because even though we have positions on them, I think that AAUW also presents them in a fair and balanced way. So we may not be millennial influencers in the way that they influence the world, but we definitely influence the voting public, and we influence women. When we do our STEM projects and we have families there and we're honoring their daughters, we're influencing well beyond this group of people and people who belong to AAUW. So for our political forums, generally they're focused on candidates, and they're generally the large elections, so every 2 years. Every other year we're bringing in representatives, state senators, U.S. congressmen, and then we have the governor's race on the off years, the presidential race the following 2 years. And one of the ways that I think we've been able to capture the size of audiences that we have, and we've had over 100 people fill up a room at the community college to come listen to a candidates forum. And Susan, our past president and a major leader in our branch, will step in and correct me if I'm wrong about any of this, but I have heard more often than not that people look forward to our forums, that they come to them knowing that they're going to hear a balanced set of questions and opportunities for their voices to be heard, but I'll talk about that a little bit. And for the candidates to interact with them, because we build in a networking time for the candidates to just kind of free flow through the audience. And that's usually at the beginning, because inevitably we go over our time because we want to try and get as many questions answered as possible. And so we start pretty early. We do the primaries and we do the general elections. And after the filing deadlines for the primaries, we reach out to all of the candidates, in local and state races and federal races as well. We have historically had candidates for Congress and Senate show up. Congressman Schrader actually came to, during his first campaign election, attended our forum and has been unable to attend it since because, well, generally he's not challenged hard in the primary. So when it comes time for the general election, we hold them in September, October, and we occasionally are conflicting with Congress still being in session. So same with Senator Wyden and Senator Merkley. Senator Merkley has attended one of our forums when he was first moving through this process. We've had governor's candidates moving through this process. We open it up to everybody, and I think that's one of the things that makes it a little bit different. The primary elections are a little harder to manage because there tend to be a lot of people. I think we do a pretty good job of it. We break it out into groups. We have local races coming up to the table, and the state and then federal races. We make a personal outreach to each of the candidates to invite them. Initially, I would say at the local level, we generally have a 90 to 100% response rate of yes. When we move up to the state level, I would say that we are between 85 and 95%, depending on which election it is, primary versus general. And then, of course, at the federal level, with those few notables aside, we quite often get the folks who just really need a platform because it's really hard to run against incumbents. And so they really view these opportunities, take advantage of them. And I think a lot of them, although they may not be successful, I think that their experience at our forums give them a very positive sense of how they are engaging with the constituents and how they are feeling the pulse of the communities that they're trying to represent. And so even at that level, we may not get the big names sometimes, but we definitely get a lot of the folks who have said, you know what, I may not have a chance, but I want to throw my name in there. I want to quit complaining about it, and I want to do something about it. And so those personal invitations go out. We set the date. I do my best to provide a couple of dates to see if we can't, ensure the most participation possible. And of course, I have occasionally conflicted with our standing events and had to make some changes to accommodate that. And then we get that on the books. We've lately, and I think this has been a really big benefit, we've been partnering with our local newspaper. So they've been providing the free advertisement. And of course, we take advantage of PSAs. They were live streaming on Facebook. The last 4, we'll talk about the one that was done virtually at the end. They have live streamed for us. We've had them taped and shown on our public access channel. Really, our goal is to have as many people as possible hear the candidates and the questions that they're asked, because these are the authentic questions. These are the questions that the people in the communities have concerns about. So, yep, there's a lot of talk at higher levels, but at the end of the day, how does it affect me is what people want to know. And so we do not take questions verbally from the audience. They are all written. They are read by the moderator, and during that time, the moderator will use a little bit of discretion. They are warned that any swear words are taken out, that any character assassination is removed, which doesn't mean there's not a good question in there, but we remove that emotional piece when it is defamatory. Emotion is kept in when it's just a genuine part of the question, and you think of questions like around healthcare and things like that, where people really have a personal stake in the outcome. And the questions are read. The candidates start off with a brief presentation, a couple minutes. We move directly into questions after that. And then we give them time to wrap up at the end, a minute or two. It depends on the number of people that we have. And to really either, maybe there was a question they were just really hoping because it was important to them to answer. It gives them an opportunity to get any last minute information out that they want these constituents, because people who are there are voters. There's really little reason to be there otherwise. So this is a room full of 100 voters, and who knows how many people are watching it on Facebook and in public access. So we really do hit a broad range of folks. We have an older population, and so it's really important, I think, to the branch that we make it as accessible as possible. So that brings me to this last year where we held a virtual forum for special districts. For the first time in my time here of 21 years, almost every special district race that had a prominence was a contested race. Usually you're dragging people out of their houses, just put your name on there so we can have somebody fill that space. That was not the case this year. And we had very highly contested school district board races, which is not unusual across the state this year. Water district boards, NCRD recreation districts. It was really interesting where we were finding these issues coming up that really have been brought to light over the last 2 years and really influenced by the pandemic. It's given people a chance to really kind of step back and think and see processes and see what's broken and what isn't. And so here we have these really hotly contested races. We had, I'm sorry I don't have the number because it was an extraordinary number of people they have to manage on the Zoom call. And so we broke it up again by race. We took questions out of the chat box, which was monitored by the moderator, and we had questions come in advance because we knew that we were going to get a lot of questions. And normally our forums are close to 2 hours. I'll ask if there's an interest in going over if we have a handful of questions left, and people generally want to hear all the questions, so they'll stay. In this case, we were almost 4 hours. We had over 70 participants, not including the candidates, and 40 of them stuck with us through that whole time. It was crazy. It was recorded, and so people could watch which race they were interested in, that is the level of interest in the opportunity of a forum, and AAUW is perfectly poised to be that body that can bring it forward, because although we all have similar values, we also represent a spectrum of political parties in spite of that. And I think that's really valuable. And I know that at our forums, and Susan will correct me if I'm wrong, but the moderator's role is to read the question, not to direct the answer. There are occasions where you can see that the person may not have understood the question, try to help steer them back to the question, but ultimately it's about getting the question out there and giving these folks an opportunity to show their understanding, their competencies, the personalities that they have. I just really strongly recommend that whether you do them virtually, which was actually very successful, whether you do them virtually or you do them via in-person events or some mix of both, which I think I will advocate from this point on. I think the role of AAUW in that conversation is tremendous. We did do the 2020 election, and I did invite the presidential candidates. Just to be clear, for some reason they were unable to attend that day, but we did do it virtually. And I think the most amazing thing that came out of that for me, just as I was immersed in the middle of it, but I, for some reason, was also able to just kind of look down on it as well. And I knew a lot of the candidates before they got on this call. So I had some preconceived notions. And it was really, really interesting to see how it actually played out, because it went against my expectations. And it, I think that it had some role, surprisingly, in the outcome of the election, because I have a feeling that if you'd asked a lot of the AAUW members, they would not have wanted the outcomes that we got. And but that's what these forums are for, and it is just a really valuable experience. And so I'm a control freak, which Susan will probably also attest to. So I kind of just do this because I know where all the parts are. I know what my process is, but that goes back to the point of this has got to get written down so someone else can do it. And probably when that happens, it's going to be a couple people, not because it's so much, but because one person will just simply be like, I don't need to do all that because I am not a control freak. And so, it'll spread out. But when we do our in-person events, AAUW, our AAUW is also known for feeding people. And we have amazing spreads that we bring to our events. And the forums are one of them. One, we want to get our candidates fed and have some nourishment in them when they're up there talking. But food is just a really important part of the conversation too. People gather around it, talk about the food when there's nothing else to talk about. Food just brings people together, and our branch does a fabulous job with that. And I think that just adds to the ambiance of what we do, because I know that when these forums are getting going and people are seeing them, people who come to them regularly are like, oh, do you think there will be those X? You fill in the blank. And I like, because that's the most important reason to come. Yes, I will make sure those things are there if that means you will be present. And the whole team rallies around, whether it's their presence, their willingness to just go and do whatever needs to be done that night. Of course, bringing in the victuals to make sure everybody has sustenance. It is a team effort, but it is. I do control that part of just getting it together, because I know how I think, and so if it screws up, I can blame myself and not get mad at anybody else. And I think it works, and I think that's why Susan had me talk about it, because hopefully she thinks it works too. But this is it's a great resource for our community. And I went way over, and I'm so sorry.
So Lisa, can you tell us how long you've been doing this as a branch?
A long time, for at least 20 years.
Oh, okay.
But Susan, what I don't know is what was happening before. Because it just was something that I jumped into. I don't know how I got put into it actually, but I started moderating, and then I just kind of started pulling it together for us. But Probably longer than that. I'd turn that over to my esteemed colleague for that answer.
So you're definitely in your community recognized as influencers with this particular situation with the candidate forum. I mean, obviously you're doing it really well, and it's something that I think other branches could be doing. So anybody else have questions for Lisa?
I will say, while people are thinking, if there are any, that I know a lot of the people in our audience, and I know that they too cover the full spectrum, and they're there with their regalia on and all the paraphernalia supporting their candidates. And regardless of the party, they all walk out feeling good. And I think that is what is the most important part of our forums, is that they are fair and balanced. And regardless, people leave feeling well. Do we include the women voters in our forums? No, they have their own forum and formats. We haven't. It's certainly a good partner opportunity for sure. But we don't have a local, I'm saying this now and I'm hoping that it's true. We do not have a local League of Women Voters, but I know there is a branch down in Lincoln County.
Regina has a question.
Yes, I had a question. You mentioned League of Women Voters. I used to be active. I'm not active in League anymore, but this is in Ashland, so I'm talking about the Ashland branch. We would approach AUW, and they would make it very clear that they were not interested in, they were not political. That was it. They're not political. And since I now have been part of, I always feel that it's a little, you have to really kind of tread on some, ice there, because there's a fine line, what is political and what isn't political. And we sponsor forums, but it sounds like you really sponsor forums.
We do.
All the way from the primaries all the way up to the general elections. And so I've always had some pushback. I don't know, Trish is on this call about, are we stepping on some
Regina, we can look at Trish's comment. She would say political is different from partisan.
Yeah.
And it's AUW is nonpartisan, not necessarily non-political.
But I can see how they can confuse those two.
Sure.
So if somebody, let's say you've got 3 people running for an office, if one person says they aren't able to participate, do you still go ahead and allow the other 2 to participate?
We do. We do. It's choices, and we recognize that, and we will usually make an announcement that due to conflicts, they were unable to attend tonight, but we offered that they bring their materials. So someone may have brought their pamphlets and little doohickeys with them. Yes, that certainly has happened.
Okay, sounds
All
great.
right. I think it's a marvelous example. We have had some ballot measure forums, but we haven't had candidate forums. So I think it's something we'll be thinking about. Any other questions for Lisa? She is on vacation in the Midwest. Now I know the difference. And so Bev from California is saying also, if it is educational, that counts too. We did a state listing of the propositions. Yeah, it is educational.
And we have done forums on a couple of issue specifics that were moderated by some other folks. One was around housing specifically. There was an initiative at the local level. I know we've done at least one other one, but generally, we always make sure we do candidates forums. And now that we've tread into the special district world, maybe that will become part of our regular menu as well.
All right. Thank you so much, Lisa. Really, really helpful, informative, and a great example of something that we could be doing. Good night. Have a good rest of your working vacation. Stay on if you'd like, but if you're if it's past your bedtime back there.
It's moving towards that, but I'm gonna try and listen to the next.
Okay, and our next speaker is Regina Ayars from the Ashland branch, and she's going to talk about, as something that we've heard about before, the paper that they did on corporate boards. And Ashland is known for their 5-star program, a lot of other great things that they've been doing, but this white paper was pretty influential with the legislature last year. So Regina.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here. I did put together some slides. They are, I'm trying to make I try to make them as generic as possible, and then incorporate the content of this project that we did. And you know, I've been in public policy has always been my focus. I joined AUW in 2012 when I was actually running for city council in Ashland. And I joined, so I thought I might be able to get some votes. Whether I did or not, I don't know. But I've always been focused on public policy. And that's in my opinion, that is the best strategy for influencing and advocating for women and girls around gender equity, economically, socially, politically. I just think it's the best way to go. And it's long term. Once you get a bill in place, you actually have some clout and some real heft behind getting women the equity that they deserve. So that next slide there, Nancy. So the project that I'm going to talk about is the diversity on corporate boards. I know Trish is on this call, and I'm actually going to call on her a little bit later. And I actually have your picture in my slide presentation, Trish. So it's a good one. It's a good one of you. So diversity on corporate boards. You know, we have done lots of projects in Ashland. We are blessed with a very large public policy team that I know a lot of branches don't have. And that's the key, is to get to generate interest in your membership to participate in the public policy activities that you may be putting together. And I think one of the other projects we did was Lobby Day. I think actually that was the last in-person event that AAUW did. And that was in end of February, right before COVID hit. And so that was a good project. That was a different project than this. That took a lot of people. That took, 14 people on the public policy team to make that happen, because there were so many different tasks. This was more focused. We used a small team. So, next slide, Nancy. So this, for me, this is generically, what you might need in order to get a project going. You, of course, need the support of your leadership, and that's your local leadership. And for us, it was at the state level also. And of course, you need to pick a team. And you need to have a champion. And the champion is really important. That's the person that brings the passion. So next slide, please. So this is the leadership support. And what happened here is the way this project got started was public policy usually sponsors the first meeting of the year. So we always have guest speakers that come to the January branch meeting. And this year, or 2020, last January, we invited Pam Marsh, who is our representative from District 5. And she gave her presentation, and that was great. And then we got some questions from the audience. And Ann Bard asked the question, are you familiar with the legislation that just passed in California mandating that certain percentage of women are on corporate boards? Well, Pam said she didn't know anything about it, and we kind of moved on from there. But I remember the question, and I spoke to Anne later. And so both of us were on the public policy team. And so we took this to our public policy team and asked if this is a project, a priority that we want to take on for 2020 and 2021. And so our group agreed to it. And so that was our focus. And Paula Weekend happened to be on our public policy team, and she was the co-president at the time last year. So Paula took it to the board, the Ashland board, and they agreed. And so then Anne and Anne was actually the representative on the state public policy team that Trish chairs. And she, and I was the past representative. So the two of us went to the committee and presented the proposal that we would like to make this a priority for 2020 and 2021. And it was discussed, and there was agreement that this would be something that this at the state level, we would be interested, or the public policy committee would be interested in supporting. So we got buy-in from at all levels. So we got it at the team level, at the branch board level, and then at the state level. So I think that's crucial when you're doing a project like we were doing, which was trying to influence legislation at the state level. You need buy-in at all three levels. And so we did get that. And so the next slide. And of course, the next key thing is that you need to pick the right people. Now, this is a terrible picture of me. I have these wings out here, and it's before I made the the COVID transition from colored hair to gray hair, which I really am glad I did it. I think, I just like it. It's certainly a lot cheaper and all of that. But I'm glad I did that. But I diverged there. So we needed a small team. We couldn't have 14 people like we had on the public policy team working on this project. There would just be too many cooks in the kitchen. And we had Anne. Well, we were just lucky to have a really deep bench of professionals and very knowledgeable women in our organization. So we've got attorneys, and we've got certainly academics and educators, and lots of people with an expertise that would be important to make this project a success. And so Anne and I obviously were logical people to be on it because we kind of got the ball rolling here. But we recruited several other members from the public policy team. So Julie Benezet, and Julie is a recovering attorney, and also she's started a whole new life here as an author. And I'll give a little promo for her books. She's written 2 books, and The Journey of Not Knowing: How 21st Century Leaders Can Chart a Course Where There Is None, and then also a companion workbook that goes along with that. And she's still very much active and working and does a lot of public speaking. And so Julie was perfect for our team. And Sonia is a practicing attorney, and she joined the team. And Mary Renard is not in this picture. She joined after we had this picture taken. And she was the editor. That was her previous life. She was a professional editor. And so we had picked the right people that we thought, and it was a small core team. And so next slide. And as I said before, a champion. I think as Lisa was the champion for the forums that she has hosted over 20 years, you need somebody that's got passion for the topic. And we all have passion for getting gender equity for women and girls, and working on lots of, STEM projects, and any of those projects need to have a champion, somebody that really has the passion for the subject. And so Anne was that person. And so she was crucial for the project to be a success. So next slide. Now, okay, so how to begin? Let's see, where am I at on my little sheets here? Okay, so every project has its own specifics, but I think, these are what are important in my mind. You need to define what the need is. What are you trying to sell? What's the problem you're trying to provide a solution for? And in our case, it was obviously we need more women in decision-making positions in government and business. And and that may be obvious to us as women, especially women in AAUW, but it's not obvious to everybody. And so we needed to build a case. And, things need to be specific, they need to be achievable, and they need to be measurable. And the need that we put out there, the statistic that we came up with, I'm going to ask the question later, but this is a 48-page document that has a lot of data in it. A tremendous amount of research went into this. And I actually did the research collected the research for the, I think it was 27 corporations that are headquartered in Oregon, and collected, how many women did they have on their board? How many board members were there? When did those women actually join? And coming up with that, the bottom line on that was that of those 27 publicly held corporations, they only had an average index of 18%. So clearly that is not equity. And so we were clearly addressing a need, and we made the case and had the statistics to prove that. And then another factor is the scope. So you want this to be an achievable project. You want it to be achievable. You don't want something that's not realistic. So we knew that national was beyond our scope, but we did feel that, we could certainly influence at the state level. And because AAUW has a tremendous, thanks to Trish and her team, have a tremendous track record for influencing and sponsoring bills that have become law at the state level. So we really felt that we were capable of doing this, that was our scope. And then we need to define the goal, and it has to be specific. It can't be more, better, longer, whatever. It has to be really how are you going to determine whether your project was a success if you can't measure it at the end of the day, and make some decisions based on the results, and modify it in the future. So we knew that we had to be specific, and we were very specific. Not that didn't get changed, but okay, next slide. So what's important, or what was important in this particular project? And this is kind of generic, but of course we had to have a table of contents, which was quite lengthy in our report. And we all contributed to that, obviously, you need to really, like I said before, when we did lobby day, there were so many tasks there, but they were assigned to people so that one person knew exactly what they needed to do. And that was the case here too, although it was more of a collaboration. But we let Anne be the final person to determine what the table of contents was going to be. She had done a tremendous amount of research prior to this project even being thought of in her academic life. And so she had done a lot of research, and so that was the foundation. So we were building on something. I don't think we could have accomplished this in the, 6 months that we had, unless Ann Bard had already done a tremendous amount of work. So the next thing that always, nope, not the next slide. The next thing is the timeline. So the timeline for me, and I was a project manager when I worked and did a lot of projects. You have to have a forcing function. You've got to have a deadline. So, like with Lobby Day, we knew when Lobby Day was going to happen, and so we put our schedule together based on that and worked backwards. So the same thing here. So the timeline was that there are legislative days, I believe, in the third week of September. So that was the target. That was the target we were going for. And I believe we started this project maybe we had our first meeting in May or June. And so we had a lot of work to do. And our goal was to get this report in front of the appropriate legislators so that it could be incorporated in the movement of bills that are actually brought forward. And so a timeline is really important in my mind for making it happen. And then, as I said before, the research. This was mainly for myself and Sonia. So I did, as I said before, the 27 top corporations and what the current situation was for their boards of directors. And then what Sonia did, she did the research. There were 16 states that were either had passed laws or were had pending legislation or were considering legislation. And so Sonia put together, California got more coverage than anybody else because they were the first state to pass mandated legislation. And so there were multiple pages on California and then a paragraph or so on each of the other states and where they were in the process. And the date on the report was September 1st, 2020. So lots of things, of course, happened after that and have happened since, almost a year later. And in this particular case, we needed to justify the need and create a clear, logical flow of information. And that fell to Anne and Julie. So they were the ones that really crafted the verbiage that went into the report. And as I said before, it's 48 pages long. There are some appendices and a glossary, which was very important. I actually got to testify at one of the committees, and I think it's very important. The legislators aren't all that knowledgeable about all the subjects that come before them. They need to be educated. And I think that glossary that was included in that report was very beneficial for anybody that was reading it. And then really it was kind of a afterthought or, oh my God, somebody needs to edit this document. It's been written by 4 people. Is it readable? And Mary Bernard was just very important in order for this to be a document that people could get through. And that was really crucial, was having a editor. So next slide. Now this is the cover of the report. There's a link on the Ashland website, obviously, and on the state website that goes to the report. And actually there is a data sheet. I call it a data sheet. Trish put it together, I believe. That's more of a summary. But if you like the nitty gritty, you can dive right in and read this report. It'd be interesting to find out how many of you out there actually have read it or just even looked at it. but it has a lot of very valuable information. And I know that this legislation would not have happened if we didn't have this report. It was hefty. You could throw it on a desk and say, here, this is why we need more women in corporate boards. Next slide. Now, here's where I'm gonna call on Trish. Then we took this to the state level. So our project was to create the report. It was not to make sure that the legislation happened. Our job was to create the report that we could hand off to Trish, who would then take it to Salem. And Trish already knew this was coming, and so she was already looking for a sponsor. And she found Karen Power. I believe Karen represents District 41. And she had already started working with Karen prior to the report being finished. And so Trish took our report, and Trish really has the pulse of the legislature. And she knew she did not think that this bill would pass, that a bill would be created, if we did not expand the mandate to include underrepresented people. And I remember at the time, our team was like taken aback. Oh my God, we've done all this work and now it's not going to be enough. But she was right. She was right. And so there were amendments that were made to the legislation. Our report was specific to women, and there was not a companion report that was specific to underrepresented people, which was a long list of people, poor, the very poor, of course, Black people, Hispanic, the Pacific Islanders. It was a long list that defined what underrepresented was. And so that the amendments were made, but lo and behold, we have House Bill 3110. And it was a celebration. I mean, it was really, to be part of that process is really quite thrilling if you're kind of a policy wonk. But we had a bill. There were some changes to it that weren't, terribly well received, because they reduced the number of women that were required and underrepresented people. The penalties that were associated with not meeting the requirement were reduced. They became smaller. The timeline for implementation was pushed out. So this is what it's all about, is compromise. And nobody knows that better than Trish on our teams. And so Trish was there to lobby, and wait and lobby again. And as I said before, I got to testify at a couple of hearings. Trish testified at a lot of hearings. And next slide. And the last slide. So Postscript, and I believe most of the people in the audience know that the bill did not become law. It did pass the House, and that was a great accomplishment. But it got bogged down in the Senate. If we followed federal politics, we know this happens all the time. Passes one house, but it doesn't pass the other. And that was the case with this bill. And Trish could speak to where it got bogged down. But we will rise again. So we knew that this, most likely would not happen right away. Bills sometimes take multiple years to get through. And so we will lobby again. Hopefully, Trish is planning on doing this in 2022 and get this bill passed. And so I believe that is it for me. I hope there was some good information in there for you. Hopefully something generic enough that can be used for different types of projects in your branches. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you this evening.
Just a comment, Trish noted in chat, passed the House on a nonpartisan basis, which was huge.
Yes, yes. So Trish, is there anything that you would like to add to this?
Not really. I just want to underscore what a wonderful project that was. It just, obviously it really helped in the lobbying end of it, but I think it was a very positive project for Ashland. It really brought people together. It used their various talents. I mean, as you can, you guys listen to Regina, she's got these great slides. She's just incredibly organized, plus she can testify. But I guess the importance particularly for this is, this is a great project. You kind of come up with an idea, a branch does, and okay, let's look into it. And then let's talk to the state about it and so on, and the Public Policy Committee, and then we can work together. I think this is just a great example of what a branch can do in the area of public policy.
I agree, absolutely. And that's why we wanted to showcase it. We've heard about the Ashland Corporate Boards project previously, but I think this was really helpful. So thank you, Regina. Anybody have any quick questions? Because we do have one more presentation. Okay, Arlene and Martha. And Arlene Lemieux has long been a leader of the Gresham branch, and she has a partner that is helping her with programs this year. Arlene's past president. She's done several other things, and her partner is Martha Mansky, and they're going to talk about their projects. They actually did two. Arlene.
I don't think Martha is here. She had a medical issue, so she may not be here.
No, I do not see her.
Okay, so our first project we did at Gresham is a suffrage 100th anniversary of women's suffrage, and we did it in February of 2020, and we did it in February because we were not going to have an evening meeting that month, and so we thought it'd be a good time, which kind of was silly because it's February and we weren't going to have evening meetings because the previous February was completely shut down. But as it turned out, we had a gorgeous day. So we formed a committee about 6 months before, and we got the library as our venue, and we worked with, we got the elections division involved and the Gresham Outlook, which is the local paper. So we promoted the event with posters around the city. We had them in business offices. We had an ad in the paper. We had, in the library, we had several things. One of the advertisements was a mannequin with a period costume with a Votes for Women banner and information about the upcoming event. So the event included the bios and pictures of suffragettes, vocabulary words that we had on the walls, like you would in a museum, so that people can walk by and read it very quickly. We had a timeline. The library had a display of books on the movement. The elections division had a table. We had speakers, a county commissioner, a city councilwoman, and 2 women whose mothers were suffragettes. So we also had a snippet from the play, The Hour Is Now, a reader's theater play. And we saw excerpts from Abigail Scott Dunaway. So we had some refreshments, but being the library, we didn't want anything sticky. So we just had water and cookies, and that was it. But It was well attended. We started off that event with a march through downtown Gresham. So most of us were in costume, some were not, but we had our banners, we had our signs. The signs like this that someone had made, and we marched through town. And that started off the event. But it was such a beautiful day that we decided we could do another march at about noon, and where more people got to see the march. And people were tooting their horns, commenting as we went by that, thank you for doing this. This needs to be done. So we were happy to do that. And the event was very well attended. Okay, and our second event was February of this year, was the 50th anniversary for our branch. And at a board meeting, the board members wanted some kind of really a celebration, like cupcakes or cakes or something. So we decided on cupcakes, and how do we get them to the members when we can't meet? And we're meeting on Zoom. Somebody said, deliver it. So that started it. So we got bags. We had stickers made, and we put them on the bags. We had sugar-free cupcakes that we put in cupcake boxes that we had ordered. We had with candles, and we had a game, a bingo game that I made up specifically for our branch, with information that, of course, the board would know, but not everybody would know. So we had tea and cookies and a card. And we had, because this was February, we had Valentine's Day. So we sent every member a Valentine's card before, saying, come join us for this meeting, for this celebration. And we had 36 members show up on Zoom, which we thought was great. Usually we get 16 members at a Zoom meeting. And we had fun. People kept commenting about how much fun it was. We're not a very serious branch that would take on a huge project like the Ashland branch did, or the Candidates Forum, but we did come up with some projects that was appropriate for us.
And Arlene, I think that's the whole point, is every branch is different. Our size, our members, and everything else. And so you did something that was totally appropriate for your branch. And I think that is just great. I love your big example of the march and the suffrage display. My branch, Lake Oswego, some of our members made a quilt, which was just 4 people doing it, but the whole branch got involved in selling raffle tickets and so forth. But I think your example is just terrific. So it's something, it should give other people inspiration about what they can do, not necessarily to copy what you did, but to put together some sort of project like that. Any questions for Arlene? Lisa?
Well, really, to both you and Regina, obviously very, very different projects, but at the end of the day, really motivated by a passion for the topic. So in your case, Arlene, so this, I think about this and I have Williamsburg going through my head, period pieces and things like that. And it seems to me that is a very complicated event that you were able to pull together and coordinate and have this really big visual impact. And is that something that you see yourselves, your branch, trying to replicate over time, or was it a one-off event? Or How do you use that?
It was a one-time event, and because of the 100th anniversary, but it shows what we can do. And we did pull in people who had connections with other agencies in the area so that we could have access to certain things. And it was a lot of work, but it was also fun. And we did a lot of research on these two.
Yeah.
See that Joyce Zook from Salem says they're going to be celebrating 100 years in 2022. And so she loves the ideas, especially the bingo. So thanks for sharing.
And Pat, something perhaps we should all be looking at, thinking of milestones, is the AAUW's 140th anniversary this November. I hope everybody's putting that in their programming plans at the local level.
Thank you for sharing that. I don't know that we all knew that. Thanks.
1881. Do math.
Any other questions or comments from any of our presenters?
Suzanne Harmony says Grants Pass is turning 75.
Woo!
So many deliveries of cupcakes going to be around the state.
Yeah.
I'd like to mention something that the branch is doing in San Diego, my branch in San Diego. Since AEW is going to be 141 next year, we're going to do a membership drive 141 because of 141's birthday.
All right. I can't see everyone, but it looked like Susan Pierce had a comment.
This, if Lisa's still on, bless her heart, we had at the college on the parking lot a log truck, and we had trucks with banners on it going for a certain candidate. And into this room came all of these people. And then as an acting president, I walked to each one and handed them a card and said, we would love for you, welcome, we would love for you to write a question. Not one did. They were all show. So Lisa handled them beautifully, as always.
You know, I think the question on a card is so important, because otherwise you're going to start getting questions from the audience that will totally slant the whole proceedings. So I think that's brilliant. Good job.